All right, greetings, Algebra 2 people. Wanted to just go ahead and record a video going through those examples that we did in class. So we went through the first little bit of Gaussian elimination. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and do these two examples. And again, I'm going to kind of walk through it slowly, but I want to have it as a video so you can kind of pause it, go back, and make sure that you see what that process is. Okay, so the first example is going to be this problem right here. And the main thing, so the first thing we got to do is put it into what's called an augmented matrix, okay? And the thing about augmented matrix, so the first column is your x coefficients, the second column is your y coefficients, and then your last column is your constants. It'll end up being your solutions at the end, okay? And then the first row is your first equation. So in that first row, it's going to be a 3, a -5, and a 35. In the second row, it'll be a 1. Remember, there's a 1 in front of there. -2 and a 13. Okay. Now, the whole key to this is we have a goal. We want the answer to look like this. So we want the final matrix to look like a 1, 0, and something, and then a 0, 1, and something. Okay, and that's really going to be our answer, right? It's going to be x equals whatever, and then y equals whatever is going to be and then we're done. So here's the deal. So we're going to do this in order. So I'm going to get this. I want to make this into a 0 first. I want to make that 1 into a 0. Okay, and once you know that, we are going to basically ignore everything else for just a second and say to yourself, okay, I want those numbers to be the same. So I want them both, in this case, maybe to be 3, but I also want them to be different signs. So the main kind of trick you can use is you can multiply by or divide by anything you want to. But the catch is you got to multiply the whole row by that. So notice I've got the 3 on top and I have a 1 on the bottom. So what if I multiplied that bottom row by -3? And then I could combine those because then they would be eliminated. They would make a 0. Okay, so we use some notation to do that. And we just kind of use R for rows. So what if I take row 1? I'm not doing anything with that because, again, I've got that 3 there. Don't want to do anything with that. But then I'm going to combine that with -3 times row 2. Okay? So I'm really going to add that. So I'm going to do -3 times row 2, and I'm going to add that to row 1, and that's going to be my new row 2. Okay? Now I'm going to kind of do this right below here. So row 1 is going to be 3. I'm not changing it. 3, -5, 35. And then my row 2, -3 times row 2. And again, the whole row. So -3, 6, and -39. Multiply -3 by everything. And then I'm going to combine those together. Just go right down each column. And that's going to be my 0 that I wanted. And that's a 1 and a -4. And that is my new row 2. So I'm going to rewrite the matrix now. Okay? So now my matrix looks like this. So my row 1 hasn't changed. It's still 3, -5, and 35. And then my second row now is my new one. 0, 1, -4. Okay? And look, so I got the 0 and I got the 1. So I'm almost done. All I got to do now is get this into a 0. So now my goal is to make this -5 into 0. And kind of see what happens from there. Okay? So again, once we have that kind of tunnel vision, kind of think to yourself, okay, ignore everything else for a second. I want to make those numbers the same, but different signs. Okay, so again, I have a -5 in row in that top plot, in that top spot. I got a 1. So I want to make them the same. So by multiplying. So I can multiply that bottom number by 5, because then I've got -5 plus 5, that's going to be a 0, which is what I want. So again, use your notation. I'm going to come up here, draw an arrow so you know where I'm going. So in notation wise, it's going to be R1, because again, I'm not changing that -5. Don't have to change that thing. And I'm going to multiply that, I'm going to add that, I should say, to 5 times row 2. And that's going to be my new row 1, because that's where I want the 0. Okay, so again, row 1 is 3, -5, 35, and 5R2, oops, 5 times R2 is 0, 5, and -20. And again, just combine the rows, 3, 0, 15. And notice here, folks, and this is one thing we can always do too. Remember, I said we can multiply or divide a whole row by something if it makes it easier, if we can get smaller numbers. And notice I can divide both of these things by 3. So I can divide by 3. And that is legal. So we have our new row now of 1, 0, 5. And that's my new row 1. So now I'm going to rewrite my matrix. So my new row 1, which is what I just did, was 1, 0, 5. And my bottom row, I used what I already did, so I don't want to, so I can still have that. And that is your answer, ladies and gentlemen. So this right here, remember what this means. My column here was X and Y, and my equal sign was right there. So this is saying 1x plus 0y, so not even there. So this is saying x equals 5. And this says, there's a 0 for the x, but 1y, so this says y equals -4. So there's your answer. Okay? So again, always keep that goal in mind. You want the 0, you want that 0 and that 0, and then the ones, you should be able to simplify to get those if you need to. Okay? So let's go and do one more example and do the same exact process. That right there, you still see the goal. So, well, I didn't do a matrix first. First things first. Okay? So I'm going to write 3, -5, -1, just the coefficients, and then -4, 9, and -1. Okay? And again, goal. I want this -4 here. I want there to be a 0 right here in this spot right there. Okay? So again, tunnel vision. Forget about everything else. I want this to be a 0. Think about what you can do. How can you multiply to make those two numbers? I want the 3 and the -4. I want them to end up being the same thing, different signs, so that when I combine them, it ends up being 0, which is what I want. And notice I can do 4 times R1. If I do 4 times 3, that's 12. And if I do 3 times R2, it's -12. That's what I want. Okay? So I'm going to write this, I'm going to write it right here. So 4R1 plus 3R2, and that's going to be my new row 2. Okay? So again, 4R1, multiply the whole row, 12, -20, and -4. And then multiply 3 times R2, that's -12, 27, and -3. Okay? And again, just off to the side here, just say 4R1, and that's 3R2. Combine them, and again, just whatever you get, you get. 0, and again, we did that on purpose, so that was a 0. That's not a surprise. Negative 20 and 27, negative 4, negative 3. And again, notice I can simplify that too. I can divide both of those by 7. So really this becomes 0, 1, and negative 1. And that's my new row 2. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make my new matrix. So row 1 hadn't changed. 3, negative 5, negative 1. And now I have on the bottom 0, 1, and negative 1. Okay. Now what I want, and again, remember my goal. Now I want my other 0 right here where the negative 5 is. Okay. Tunnel vision, ignore everything else for a second. How do you multiply? How can I combine those things together? How can I make the numbers the same? Different signs. And they're already different signs, so if I multiply that bottom one by 5, then I can combine it to get 0. Okay? So I'm going to do that. So I don't need to do anything with row 1. So row 1 plus 5 row 2 will be my new row 1. Okay? So again, write down row 1 just the way it is. 5R2, 0, 5, and negative 5. Combine those, and you have 3, 0, negative 6. And again, notice I can divide those by 3. And that's usually going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now. So you got 1, 0, and negative 2. And that's your new row 1. Sorry about my pen kind of not behaving itself. So now I have, again, new row 1. So let's write my last matrix. So that's 1, 0, negative 2. And then my bottom row is still 0, 1, negative 1. And sure enough, that is my answer. Because again, this is saying x equals negative 2 and y equals negative 1. Okay? So that's that. If you want to do one more example, I'm going to flip this back over real quick. So there's an example 3 here. I'll leave that on the screen if you want to pause that and work that out on your own. And then the examples 4, 5, and 6, and I'll kind of slide this up here real quick if you want to jot those down also. 4 and 5 are special cases. Something interesting happens on 4 and 5 that we'll talk about in class. And then number 6, you can give that a try too. Okay. So again, if you want to pause the video, rewind, so you can write those down. They're on Schoology if you're one of my students. But that is that. Okay. Hopefully this helped you out with some of the process. Again, you can pause and go back and make sure you see why I did what I did. And until next time, stay safe.